Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Father Son Packers podcast, your source for Packers news, notes, and analysis. My name is Tommy, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, my dad, Matt. After a exciting round one of the NFL draft, Dad, how are you doing?
Doing all right. Came down here to San Diego to watch the draft. Well, sort of to watch the draft, to watch the dog and take advantage of watching the draft. We had a draft party, pizza, wings, chips and guac, man cave.
Yep, all the above, everything a growing boy needs. No vegetables in sight. Although we did have some
I shouldn't be
carrots, I
growing.
think,
I
with the
shouldn't be
wings,
growing
technically.
anymore.
Fair enough. But anyway, we are here today to just do a quick little reaction. This is going to be a bit shorter pod than usual because we're going to be doing our deep dives starting next week. So we're not going to get as deep into the numbers as we will coming next week. But just to give our initial reactions to the Packers' first round pick, Dad, offensive tackle with the 25th overall pick, the Green Bay Packers select offensive tackle Jordan Morgan out of the University of Arizona. I guess let's just start with our initial reactions. Dad, what did you think when the Packers made this pick?
So I was not surprised they were taking an offensive lineman in the first round. I thought it was one of the most likely options, actually. But my initial reaction was the obvious long-term comp to Graham Barton, who went just one pick later to the Bucks. And as we had on kind of our board, one of the two players we thought most likely for the Packers to pick by the time their pick came up. So I think we'll see. It's like how they both progress. They're both, tackles in college mostly, projected to possibly move inside the pros. Identical arm length. Barton was 10 spots higher on the consensus board. Some comparisons you can't make because Spartan didn't do agility. I mean, Spartan did agility just as Morgan didn't. Morgan did jumps and Barton didn't. But in the final summary of this initial thought was fingers crossed that Green Bay got it right this time. And this isn't a repeat of Myers versus Humphrey.
Of Josh Myers versus Creed Humphrey, which I think you had been thinking, but I don't know if you had actually fully said that your initial reaction was like, I hope it's not Josh Myers, Creed Humphrey, which if you guys remember was, back in 2021 NFL draft, if I remember correctly. Packers in the second round take Myers ahead of Humphrey, and we know where that has gone, and Myers hasn't exactly been the best, and Humphrey's been one of the top centers. And
Yeah.
I think
So
my initial reaction,
my knee jerk reaction.
Ahead, yeah.
That was my knee jerk reaction initially.
Yeah, my knee jerk reaction was, I love the investment on offensive line. I thought that was where they should go, unless like Terry and Arnold or Quinyon Mitchell fell to them, which they did not, so that's fine. Or if they wanted to move up for them, which they also did not. My issue was more with the style of offense. Not issue. Okay, I don't want to say issue because I don't want us to go all negative. But my initial reaction was, I just wanted a more physical presence on the offensive line. I feel like that is what has kind of been an issue for the Packers at times. Is they kind of get their butt kicked up front from time to time, where it's like they have all these finesse guys, and at times it just turns into an issue where it's like they can't win in short yardage situations, or they can't blow people off the ball, or they're getting, they're being physically bullied up front at times. And I think Morgan is kind of another issue. Well, not an issue. Morgan is another instance of, he's a finesse guy. He's a really good mover. We're going to talk about like our thoughts after watching a few games of him last night. But my initial reaction was like, I just wanted a more physical presence on the offensive line that I thought Graham Barton could be. Whereas, Morgan is more of that finesse guy. He's more of a mover. He's not going to move. He's not a people mover. He's like a mover in space. And, but it seems like that's what they wanted. A little shorter arms. I am a little worried about how he deals with power, but, we're going to see. And we're going to talk a little bit about, just a couple quick reactions to what some other people are saying. But those are definitely our initial reactions and how we were feeling in the moment. Dad, do you want to just give our listeners just a quick breakdown on, how Morgan did in like what Morgan was doing in college? Give us the elevator pitch, since this is just our quick reactions episode, not our full deep dive, which you'll be able to listen to next week when we're going to go into, snap counts, winning rates, win rates at the Senior Bowl, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We'll do a full deep dive then. But Dad, do you want to just give like the little, the brochure, the pamphlet, the intro?
Yeah. So let's start with a little bit. He was the seventh offensive lineman off the board. in the first round. Um, he was 36th consensus rank and ended up going 25. Um, he will turn 23 in August, so before the season starts. Um, but you mentioned about how he's a kind of a finesse player. So what he is kind of on brand with the Packers have done.
Yeah.
Like agile movers, finesse blockers, not road graders. So he's not going to change their ability to just bully people in the end zone and short yardage situations, but kind of dancing bear around for pass pro. He does meet, people talked about like compared to say Amarius Mims, where how many starts he's had. He's had Morgan, in contrast, had a ton of experience. Started 37 games for Arizona, all at left tackle. Had 1,500 pass blocking snaps and 904 run blocking snaps in 5 years, and all of the snaps at left tackle except for like six but as a like inline tight end according to PFF.
Yeah, which
So
definitely was
just
a
basically
sixth
like an extra
lineman.
tackle,
Yeah, exactly.
playing
So
outside
just
of the other
tackle
tackle.
and extra tackle are where his snaps are.
Yeah,
Although, I will just say really quick, Brian Gutekunst in his presser did say they think he can play all four spots. He was like, yes, he is a tackle, but we think he can play four spots for us, which I'm assuming is left tackle,
yeah.
left guard, right. Everything but center, I
Is,
think, is what they're thinking.
you meant. Yeah, and most people seem to assume that is going to move inside, even though he's only played left tackle in college.
And they did, I do want to say, just when the pick was made, they announced him at tackle, if I remember correctly, which does matter.
Okay. And kind of related to that, so his top comparable on mock draftable at offensive tackle is Ryan Ramczyk.
Yeah, and what that comp does is it's comparing, physical attributes. It's like physical attributes wise, very similar to Ryan Ramczyk, which, if you don't know, has been a star right tackle for the Saints for a long time now. And if he turns into Ryan Ramczyk, I think we're all going to be running laps. I'm going to be running circles around like the block, like at a full sprint, because I'll be so excited if he's Ryan Ramczyk. But yeah, so that's his physical comp.
Yeah. Other little bit of story about college. I think most people expected him to come out a year ago, but he tore his ACL in November of 2022 against UCLA. So he stayed in school an extra year and rehabbed, and he actually was able to make it back in time for week one. So only like 10 months later, and played a full slate of games last year.
Yeah, and I know some people were saying like they felt like he improved as the season went on, and I mean I find it impressive that he was able to work back that quickly from a torn ACL in November to work back and be ready by the start of the season for Arizona. I mean that's pretty impressive, and I think I wonder if that was like an extra hey, like he came back from injury quickly. I wonder if that was something that the Packers were like, okay, that's a plus even.
And I think that they maybe even grading his like 2023 season a little bit on a curve, that the kind of conventional wisdom is you're not fully back until the second year after the ACL reconstruction. So maybe they're expecting him to be even better this coming year.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like I said, some scouts felt like that he improved as the year. Some other things that people had to say. So these are some quotes from some broadcasts. The Athletic NFL's like live stream with Robert Mays, Dane Brugler, and Nate Tice. So Dane Brugler said, "quote I think he has the ability to stay outside. I just think he's better inside." And then Nate Tice said, "quote He screams zone guard." Nate Tice also did say like he would still try him at tackle, and he said he really reminds him like the way he moves of Zach Tom. That the only real issue with Morgan is possible like length issues, because Brian Gutekunst said like, hey, we've had linemen around here who don't conform to like usual like lineman builds, like we're kind of used to that. Like he's talking about guys like Zach Tom and Brian Bulaga. Those guys' arms are still like a good quarter of an inch longer, or
three-eighths of an inch longer.
They're still their arms are still, even their arms who are shorter and on the shorter side of what Packers have drafted, their arms are still longer than Morgan. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on, is he does have short arms, even for them, even for a team that doesn't necessarily care about arm length. It's still really short arms. I think it's 9th percentile arm length it would be for a tackle. He does have massive hands. He has like 9th percentile arm length and 95th percentile hand size. So that's kind of stunning.
Catcher's mitts at the end of T-Rex arms.
Yeah, it's kind of like big trash can lids at the end of small little twigs, or not twigs. I guess they're not skinny arms. He's a strong guy. But no, yeah. So, and then Daniel Jeremiah of NFL Network said, quote, I didn't think he was a very violent, super physical player, but an excellent athlete, end quote. And we'll have more quotes from like Dane Brugler's The Beast and some more in-depth things when we do our full breakdown of this player, as well as the rest of the Packers draft picks. So keep an eye on us for the rest of the off season. We'll be doing deep dives into each player of the Packers draft, including Jordan Morgan next week. But so just keep your eye out for that. These are our initial reactions, a little more passionate, a little more unhinged, a little less analytical, but still just as fun.
More unhinged than usual.
Oh yes, we didn't think it was possible, but we're gonna go there.
Do we need to put a disclaimer on this episode?
But no, so it sounds like Dad Green Bay thinks he can play all four spots, or not all four. Since he can play 4 spots, it sounds like they're going to get their best 5 out there, is what Gutekunst said. Before we start talking a little bit about Morgan, I kind of wanted to pick your brain a little. I know this isn't in our doc, about maybe what this means for Zach Tom. Do you think that the pick of Jordan Morgan indicates, the reporting that Rob Domofsky had that the Packers are considering moving Tom to center? How does the selection of Morgan shape your view on that, and just your view on the deployment of the offensive line room in general?
So this is a very interesting question. I haven't really thought about it this way, because in contrast to Barton, which most people think he's going to end up being a center, is maybe the top center in the draft, nobody's really talked about Morgan at center, including the Packers apparently.
Yeah.
So this may lead a little bit more credence to the idea of Tom moving to center, that Morgan's going to be somewhere else besides center. Now, it's possible that Morgan, it sounds like they're going to try him at tackle and see how that goes. Let him, fail tackle first.
Yeah.
But maybe he'll end up at guard this year. That's a little murky. Could he be right guard? I wouldn't hate that.
Wouldn't hate it. I would be a little bit like, okay, I know. So, okay. And part of it is, in my opinion,
mean he's going to be right tackle this year. And
that's what I'm saying.
Tom's
I don't want to talk
already moving to center.
I don't want to talk out of 2 sides of my mouth, because I will say, going into the draft, I thought ideal scenario was like a guy like Fautanu or a guy like Barton, where they could play guard early in their career and then move to tackle later if they needed to. And so that's kind of something where it's like, hey, that's kind of what Jordan Morgan is. It's like he can get on the field like right away at guard. And then if you want to improve from Walker or you want to move Tom, you can then kick him out to tackle. I think right now, if you were looking at the deployment of the line, is your best 5, if your goal is to get the best 5 out there, is it Morgan at left tackle, Elton at left guard, Tom at center? I don't know who at right guard, like Josh Myers maybe at right guard, or a rookie at right guard.
You've hit the snag there.
That's the issue, is do they like Myers at guard, and who has never played guard at the college or higher level? He's only played center since college.
So my take on that would be Walker at left tackle, Elton at left guard, Myers at center, Morgan at right guard, and Tom at right tackle.
But what about Royce Newman? Where does he slide into this? This is what the people really want to know. What if we just put Royce Newman at right guard and then the other thing I did want to note is, a lot of people are saying, oh, Rasheed Walker,
and how many backs do we need in the backfield to stay in and block?
Just run a wing tee or something. But anyway, the thing I did want to touch on really quick was, while Rasheed Walker has only played left tackle in like regular season games for the Packers, and so some people are like, oh, like, can he move to right tackle? The first time that they played Rasheed Walker in the preseason in 2022, when when everyone's like, he missed like the first 2 preseason games because of injury. Then he showed up in the 3rd preseason game, and people were like, is he even going to make the team? He's a 7th round pick. The first place they played him was right tackle. They played him at right tackle in that preseason game. And that was when everyone was like, oh, Rasheed Walker's pretty good. Like, he's going to make the team. Like, he showed enough in this one game that he's definitely making the team. And so while he played left tackle only last year, I think that was more a function of like, hey, the left tackle spot is open because Bakhtiari is out. And I don't think they wanted to switch 2 spots, or they just like Zach Tom more at right tackle. I think they think like Walker can play either left tackle or right tackle, which also, makes him an intriguing candidate as maybe the swing tackle. Maybe he's not a starter, but I think, there's some flexibility with Walker where if they felt like Morgan was like, oh, like, even though he has arm length concerns, he's been a left tackle his whole career, we want to try him at left tackle first. I think there's like a window there where it's like they try him at left tackle, they move Walker over to right tackle, they move Tom to center. I mean, the line is a
It's a
jumbled right
lot.
now.
That's a lot of moving pieces. But I think you also mentioned that Walker played right tackle this past training camp as well. So not just 2 years ago, but last year as well
Oh, was it
in the
last year as well?
preseason.
I had missed that one I wasn't as sure of, but I know too when they first played him. I can vamp while you look that up really quick. When they first played him in the preseason 2 years ago, they played him first at right tackle, and he acquitted himself well there. The other thing, I just wanted to touch on is, like I do struggle with this idea of like leaning more into finesse along the offensive line. And so if you put Tom at center, you're just getting smaller at offensive line, right? Like you then have, Walker's a bigger guy, but if you're taking Myers off the field, who's like 6'5", 315, and then moving Tom to center and then bringing Morgan in, you're getting substantially smaller along the offensive line. And I do wonder, like, does that lead to more issues with physicality? Not that Myers always plays with the greatest drive or strength or like stuff like that, but you do run the risk of just getting much smaller quickly along the offensive line.
Yeah, and Walker is one of their bigger guys at
Yes.
6'6", 324. And I looked, so he played in preseason this year. He played 120 snaps at left tackle and 23 at right.
Okay.
So in the game against Cincinnati, he basically split his time between left and right.
Okay, but so clearly the Packers are like willing to work him at both, and I think he's looked good in the preseason at least at right tackle. So I think he's going to be able to compete at both spots. But Dad, anything else you wanted to touch on along the O-line room in general, or should we talk just a little bit about our first impressions, rewatching Morgan with the view of him in this Packers O-line room?
Well, one more thing. You did quotes from some of the draft analysts and Gutekunst, but also Morgan himself.
Yep.
When you say like his heart stopped when he was picked by the Packers, it's like, oh, we got to play with a heart condition. I don't know if you saw those tweets.
No, I didn't see that where people joking, but like, oh, my heart stops. Like, oh, that's scary. Don't do that.
But he did say that he studied Bakhtiari's game, and which I think everybody will like if he's studied it well and learned it well. And Bakhtiari gave him a shout out on Twitter.
I was going to say, I don't know if you saw that as well.
Yeah. Says, whatever, represent the G in the city, whatever. So
and the position, I think is like a fun. Also, I just saw on Twitter, Jordan Morgan's going to wear 77. Good number, solid number.
Okay, same number he wore in college.
Yes, exactly. I think the last player to wear it was. Actually, it was. I think it was Tenuta's number.
I don't know.
This past year, I can't remember. I think, or I can't remember. I thought it was Tenuta's, but I could be wrong. Dad, should we move really quick into, another fun fact about Morgan that I just wanted to throw out there since we're talking about just some how he has fun tattoos. That's another fun thing. He has tattoos from a bunch of different horror movies.
For any of you horror genre junkies out there.
Yeah. Shout out Dusty Evilly.
Shout out Dusty Evilly.
But yeah, he's got like a Pennywise tattoo. He's got a Freddy Krueger tattoo. I think he's got a Michael Myers tattoo. He's got other tattoos as well that are horror movie inspired. So I think that was cool. But Dad, last night, late after the draft, we rewatched a couple of games of Morgan. We rewatched all of his snaps versus Washington and all of his snaps versus Utah. And we're going to get a little bit more in depth into that, like I said, next week when we're doing our real full deep dive. But what were your initial thoughts, watching him in both of those games against, some higher level competition? The Utah has Ellis, who, is projected to go sometime day 2. Washington has, Braylon Trice, who's expected to go sometime day 2. What did you think watching him against both of those teams?
So my kind of big picture impression is that he moves really well. We basically never saw him on the ground. So stays in good balance. He has what I thought was a good first step off the snap in pass pro. So that's something like maybe something's actually been picking up from studying Bakhtiari. That was one of Bakhtiari's kind of superpowers, was to get moving into position.
Yeah, I don't think his
anybody off the snap. It's not quite that fast.
I don't think his timing and his kick are quite. They're not quite that tier, because that was like Bakhtiari was like one of the best ever at like timing the snap and getting that quick kick out. But no, he does have some quickness off the snap.
But I think he is something you could. I think he is noticeably working towards. And now on the downside, I think he was not aggressive in driving the defender back in the run game. Meaning, like
Yeah,
it starts to
that's
be like I go downfield and give like a one push block on downfield run blocking.
that was something that did leave me wanting for more, like just some nastiness, not like dirtiness, but like you do want your lineman to. I know this is probably like a bit of a meathead take, but you want your lineman to have like a little, like nastiness to him, a little kick to him, a little play through
Yeah,
the whistle. He
I,
doesn't. I don't think
I,
that's like necessarily like his game. Not that he doesn't have like good intangibles. Brian Gutekunst talked about he's a captain. Arizona people have talked about he's like our model in the weight room. Like guys like gravitate towards him and like follow his example in the weight room. I just don't think he has like a whole lot of aggression and like violence to him that maybe you want in the offensive line, because he's not like burying guys after the whistle. He's not playing through the whistle usually. Like he'll block his guy and then like go to the next snap, like which obviously you don't want to get penalties and stuff. You want to play, you don't want to try and hurt anyone, but it's good to set the tone sometimes too. So I think that was where I was left
yeah.
wanting.
I think you said in the middle of the game rewatch, it was like, could you just block all the way to the whistle, please? Can I see a block all the way to the whistle?
Yeah, can we just block you through the whistle like a couple times? But maybe it was just those couple of games. We're going to do even more deep diving through this weekend. But like you said, smooth mover. So smooth. Like, and so under control. I think my biggest takeaway on the positive side is like he is so under control at all times. Like he's pretty good. He's pretty good recovery, but you just don't see him have to do it that much. Like he's just like in control on run blocks. It's like, okay, I get to my spot, and then like he's not like pushing anyone back. He did a pretty good job like cracking down. He could get some drive on blocks if he was like cracking down on a lineman and able to push them, or he did a good job getting pushed on double teams. But for the most part, a lot of his run blocking is just like, get in the right position and like wall the guy off. Get in the right position, wall the guy off, and like kick back move. Like, and he's just so under control. Like you said, in that entire game, I didn't see him leave his feet one time. Like he never ended up on the ground at all, which is like, that's a major plus for alignment. And he's just, such a smooth mover. Like Nate Tice said, like Dane Brugler said, like Dan Jeremiah said, he's a really good athlete. He really is. Like you watch his feet and you're like, this guy is a very clean, like is going to just get in his set, going to kick back. There are a couple times where he would overset to the outside and get beat back across his face. I think he turns guys.
Anyway.
Yeah, I think he turns guys really well. Like in terms of like he's able to get torque with guys where it's like his core is pretty dang strong because he's able to just turn guys to the outside, turn guys to the outside over and over again.
In support of some of what you were saying before, is he must have good core strength, and because of the few times we've seen him actually recover, and is basically his ability to twist his torso and reestablish position. Yeah. He's shown on a number of occasions.
He does give up his chest sometimes, which I think is a product of him having shorter arms. And he does like what was it? I think Ben Fennell was saying he goes from outside to in, and like kind of like it kind of reminds me of how Bulaga used to catch guys. But I think that it runs into trouble for him because his arms are even shorter than Bulaga's, where it's like because he's going outside to in, and Ben Fennell mentioned this as well, is good follow on Twitter. Because he's going outside to in, he's just giving up his chest every time, and so sometimes he just gets pushed back and buried backwards. He also has a tendency to like he'll just let the edge like run around, which is like fine. A lot of tackles do that, but like I do think like it got him into trouble a couple times where it's like the guy was a little bendier than he realized and like just got around him still, and like he thought he was running him around the hoop.
Him past the QB.
He thought he was running him past the QB, and the guy just bent under him and got past him, and I think that like got him into trouble a couple of times. But no, yeah, I think like I said, biggest takeaway, and we'll do a much deeper dive than this. We just want to do our quick reactions pod. Really, really fluid, really smooth, really under control. Wish he had a little more aggression and power and nastiness to him, but just I think that could be what the line needs. I think they're just like, at times they get a little too finessey, and they just need to be able to run through a guy's face and, just like set the tone that way. But you watch him and you understand why the Packers liked him, I think is my summary there.
Yeah, in watching the tape, I was happier with the pick than immediately when it happened before we went back and started watching the games.
Yeah, and I think it all comes down to like, have they had some misses at offensive line? Yes, like you got Sherrod, you got Spriggs, you got a couple other guys, but for the most part, Green Bay has done well, identifying and like scouting offensive line talent.
Yeah. They mostly know what they're doing,
and so
the model they use works. And he pretty much fits their model.
Yeah, and so I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt, even though it's not the player that I would take. Dad, anything else you wanted to talk about with Morgan? Obviously, I'm going to keep saying this. Come listen to our deep dive next week and for the rest of the offseason. I think we're going to have some nice fun stuff for you guys. Anything else on Morgan you wanted to quickly react to, or should we react a little bit to the draft as a whole, and then maybe we'll talk a little bit about some Tay 2 stuff?
Yeah, let's. I think we'll save what any kind of detail and more a deeper dive for the next time.
Yeah.
And give our overall take on the first round and what we are looking for.
Yeah. So
we're recording before day two has started.
Yes. But yeah, the first round. I mean, mostly chalk early.
I was going to say it was a lot of chalk and not nearly the movement they led us to believe was going to happen.
Yes, a lot of people are saying, "Oh, we could have like 5 trades in the first round." First 9 picks go by without a trade. Until the Vikings move from 11 to 10.
Right. The first trade was
a one spot move. But yeah, so the first 9 picks go by. First 14 picks overall are all offensive players, which is the most ever. The previous most ever was 7 in a row, so we doubled that. That's kind of wild. First defensive player doesn't go off the board until Laiatu Latu at pick 15. Were you surprised at all by the run
in the first 12?
Six quarterbacks in the first 12
QBs.
Yeah, I mean, we Michael Penix at 8. I mean, we have to talk about it.
Well, this is like the biggest surprise of the night was not the Packers picking Morgan at 25. It was the Falcons picking Michael Penix at number 8.
Yeah, and you know what they said? They're trying to be us. Apparently, they said we spent a lot of time talking about the Green Bay model. I think I can't remember if it was Terry Fontenot, their GM, or Raheem Morris, their new coach. Was saying spent a lot of time looking at the Green Bay model. It's really worked for them. If you have to sit for a few years, I mean, people are shocked and stunned. And I don't want to. We're not a Falcons podcast, so we're not going to talk about this for a long time. But I mean, I
very different podcast if we were Falcons fans.
Oh
right
yes,
now.
I mean, but I can only imagine how they reacted because I grabbed my chest in shock. I was like, what?
I'm coming, Elizabeth.
But no, yeah. So, I mean, that was a shock. Some other things, maybe we should talk about is the NFC North. A lot of movement, a lot of picks. That 2 of the teams that traded. I mean, the Vikings traded twice and the Lions traded once. But other than that, we didn't have very many trades. We have looking at around the NFC North. Bears had a very nice draft, getting Caleb Williams and having Roma Dunze fall to them at 9.
Yeah, they gotta admit, the Bears got
really nice day one.
Maybe everything they could hope for.
Yeah, I think that's the ideal pick for both of those spots for them. That would have been my ideal pick for them if I was trying to plan a mock draft for them. So, that they had a very nice draft. Vikings were incredibly aggressive, moving from 11 to 10 for JJ McCarthy. So we got 2 new quarterbacks in the division, which is going to be exciting this year. I think the NFC North is going to be super competitive, which I think is going to be a lot of fun. They also moved up for edge Dallas Turner, who was a guy that some people predicted might go in the top 10, might even be the first defensive player off the board. So that's good value. But they did trade a lot of capital to do that. They moved the first, 2 seconds, 2 thirds, 2 fourths, and a fifth. I think for all of those.
I think the initial reactions are both players that they picked were ranked highly, but boy, they gave up a lot to get the 2 of them.
Yeah, someone said though, it's imagine though, their rationale for why it wasn't too much is they didn't have to move heaven and earth for McCarthy like people thought they might.
This is true. So they felt like we got these extra picks we weren't expecting.
Exactly. They're we were gonna give these up anyways. Might as well spend them on something. It's they had a surplus of picks. It's we gotta spend these, or the boss isn't gonna give us as much next year to cut our budget. But so the Vikings, made some aggressive moves, and then the Lions traded up ahead of the Packers to address their corner need, taking a corner Terry and Arnold out of Alabama. Dad, any thoughts on what the NFC North was doing around the Packers? I think most of those teams can be pretty happy with the selections that they made. Even if the Vikings, had to pay a premium to get those players. But, I think, NFC North is going to be competitive this year again. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, Terry and Arnold was kind of a steal. Went 13, 14 spots later than expected. From a consensus 11 until 2024, right?
Yeah.
And he was a guy that I was kind of hoping would fall. If he was still there at 25, I was I kind of like him as a pick.
Yeah, I would have loved him as a pick as well. Lions jump ahead of them. Brian Gutekunst said, I guess the Lions had been calling around, had even called the Packers, like talking about whether or not the Packers would be interested in moving down and having the Lions come up. And so he was like, yeah, no, we expected the Lions to move up. It wasn't too surprising. So, some people were like, oh, did the Lions like snipe the Packers for Terry and Arnold? Maybe, but it sounds like the Packers weren't surprised, at least, that the Lions moved up for that.
Yes.
Anything else on the first round, Dad, that you wanted to touch on, or should we talk a little bit about looking ahead to day 2?
I would say the other little surprise, just to look at the whole, is like the Bills traded back with Kansas City to let the Chiefs get the fastest wide receiver in the draft again.
Yeah,
Xavier Worthy.
That I think here's the thing.
Do the Bills ever want to get past the Chiefs? Because the Bills Bills are desperate for a wide receiver.
Yes,
and they traded back twice to give other teams wide receivers.
Yeah, but AD Mitchell's still on the board. Lab McConkey is still there's still receivers on the board for them.
It'd be interesting to see that they're first overall in day 2.
Yeah,
right now
exactly. And there's speculations that this gives them essentially an entire day. There aren't speculations that this gives them an entire day. This gives them an entire day.
Was it an entire day?
And there are speculations that this now will be a spot where they're going to try and move that pick for a veteran receiver like Deebo Samuel, like Brandon Ayuk, like T. Higgins, and just kind of work all day on the phones and see if they can make a move there with that 33rd pick. Although apparently a few teams, like the Patriots as well, are interested in moving for one of them as well. After the Niners took Ricky Pearsall, another wide receiver in the first round.
And the Patriots have 34, pick 34.
That
and the Bills have pick 33.
It's something like that. But I just wanted to touch on one other thing really quick. And, I was going to say, yes, Xavier Worthy, Chiefs, like, everyone's going to think Tyreek Hill. Like, if he was picked by anyone but the Chiefs, wouldn't people mostly be saying, haha, like, you just picked him because he was fast? Like, if the Raiders had traded up to pick him, people would have laughed at that pick, right?
If like, it was the Raiders, but I've heard several people say that he's actually a football player who's fast as opposed to
he weighs as much
as a fast player like John Ross.
He's built like me, though. Like, he's 5'11", 170. Like, that's exactly my build. Like, I would die if I went and played football. But, I mean, I know he's built differently than me, but not that much differently, I guess. Yeah, but anything else on the first round that you wanted to touch on, or should we move on to day 2?
That was the other sort of little note. So it was like the little wildness going on. It seemed wild in the moment, anyway, in the first round.
Yeah. All right, looking ahead really quick to day 2. Dad, there a lot of good players still on the board. Who are your favorite players left for the Packers?
Yeah, so one of them was a guy that we thought they might have picked at 25. A lot of people thought they might have picked at 25. It was probably the most mocked player to the Packers in round 1. It's Cooper DeJean. So he's still there. He's fallen, 10 spots from consensus?
I thought it was more, but yeah, it might be. No, he was 18 consensus, so he's fallen at least 14 spots, right? If I remember correctly, it was 18 on the consensus mock draft board.
So he's already fallen 14 spots. Other players, the other two that I'm looking at. So, you know me, I had trouble keeping it at 3, but I made it only 3. Edgerrin Cooper, linebacker from
Texas A&M.
Texas A&M.
Got you. Yep.
And Marshawn Nealon, the edge rusher from
Western Michigan,
right? Directional Michigan of some kind.
I was going to say, I always confuse Western and Central too. I could see that. You were like, is it Central? Is it Western? Which one's the one in white? Which one's the one in burgundy?
I'd be really happy if the Packers get 2 of these 3 guys in the second round. And if they miss out on one, there are players like, if they don't get DeJean, they get like Bullard or...
I would like Bullard, yeah.
Cole Bishop or...
et cetera, et cetera.
Adrian
Taylor
Cooper,
Demerson, yeah. There's
options. If they don't get Cooper, maybe Junior Colson or
Peyton Wilson. No linebackers have been taken yet, so
nope. But if they get 2 of these 3, I'll be pretty happy in the second round with their 2 picks.
Yeah. For me, I think, players that I'm looking at, obviously I think any of the 3 you said would be, exciting, all players that, some people had going in the first round. For me, I think, Johnny Newton would be really interesting, the defensive tackle out of Illinois. He's a guy who, maybe medical concerns are the reason that he's fallen, but a lot of people had him as a first-round talent. Some people even had him as the first defensive player off the board. Another player is Mike Samerstil, who's a bit of a slot corner out of Michigan. A little smaller, but, I just really like the way that he plays football. And then Jackson Powers-Johnson, the center guard out of Oregon. I think, like I said, I want us to get some more mauling up front, some more power up front, and he fits that to a T.
He is a ball. He likes to put people on the ground.
Yeah,
and
which
then jump and then lay on top of them.
Yes, which Rasheed Walker likes to do too.
Yes,
Go Google that clip.
anyway.
But anyway,
yeah. So that I was thinking about it. If they now pick like Jackson Powers Johnson or some other like a guard prospect, does that change your? How much does that change your projected lineup?
If they took Jackson Powers Johnson, or like let's say they take Jackson Powers Johnson, like because that's the player that I said, then I think we're getting into a world.
What's your lineup?
Well, that's what I think. To me, that's a world where Zach Tom at center makes more sense because I think Jackson Powers Johnson is a guard. I know he played center in Oregon, but I think there are people who have concerns with his snapping ability, and so if you play him at guard right away, then you go Jordan Morgan, Elton Jenkins, Zach Tom, Jackson Powers Johnson, Rasheed Walker, and then you have Myers as like an interior swing piece. So that's kind of how I view it. But that's probably what I would go with. Would you do something similar? Or would you do something different?
See, that's literally I was my initial kind of knee-jerk reaction would be the opposite view. It's like, oh, well, then they got a center, and they're not going to move Zach Tom inside. But you're thinking more about.
I'm thinking more about him as a guard.
His snapping ability.
It's important. It's a very important thing, and that's something that I think people don't talk about as much. I'm just going to say Josh Myers, Creed Humphrey. Myers was a better snapper last year. That's all I'm going to say. Creed Humphrey was bouncing some of those balls in the playoffs to Patrick Mahomes' legs. But anyway, Dad, this was just going to be our quick reactions to the first round, and we're getting to around quick reactions time. Any last things you wanted to add, or should we wrap up here?
I think we could wrap up while we can still claim we're in quick reaction.
Timeline.
Short episode time.
Yeah, once you get over 40 minutes, it's like a real episode, and no excuses. But anyway, thank you everyone so much for listening. This has been our instant reactions, pseudo instant reactions to the Jordan Morgan pick, to the entirety of the first round, to where the second day 2 might be going. We're going to be doing, like we said, all of our deep dive stuff starting next week, including Jordan Morgan. So if you're like, hey, they barely talked about Jordan Morgan, you're right. But we're going to be talking a whole lot more about him next week. So just tune back in then. Come give us a follow on Twitter at FatherSonPacker. We're going to be tweeting through the rest of the draft. So just keep your eyes on us there. We're going to be, talking about the picks, talking about, who's still on the board, retweeting Packers news if they're trying to make moves, retweeting content from other Packers content creators, talking about some stats, some numbers. So just keep an eye on us there once again on Twitter at FatherSonPacker. Subscribe on your podcast platform of choice. Keep your eyes on the draft. Keep your eyes on the prize. And until next time, go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.